You are listening to the Law Enforcement Pirate Radio Network. Radio Free Larry presiding.
You can run, but you can't hide.
Radio Free Larry.
So I'll just spend a little bit of time explaining the scams. The origination for the scams is variegated. Something as basic as the old boy, old girl network. Your church has an old boy, old girl network in it, just in case you don't know it. Other places also. It could be another agency, another department, CIA, private eyes. One thing you have to understand, they'll give you all the evidence you need, but you have an obligation to understand whether it's real evidence or not. And even if it's real evidence, does it really, again, it's just like the media, how they take something that's innocuous and make it seem like an emergency, that kind of thing. So trying to adjust the volume one down because I think it's a little bit peaking a little bit. So when I was in Santa Fe, again, if I would have known my life would have took the course it did, because it wasn't really that good there either, but I would have been more aggressive in the investigation and speaking about the investigation, although I spoke about some of it. So in Santa Fe, from what I could tell, at a certain point, I was trying to figure out whether it was like a federal task, and it could have been a federal task force, but used for corrupt purpose. And that's how the feds do this type of thing, and it's not protecting anyone. In fact, it's part of a CIA type of operation, not that it's a CIA operation that benefits the United States in any way. Again, it's criminal enterprise. And again, it's not, the deep state is not a political party. That was a scam that they used to disrupt the things I was speaking about to make it a political hot potato. I called it the federal racketeering criminal enterprise, that kind of thing. And it's not only federal, it's federal, state, and local. In the beginning, the state and local was much smaller, although in a place like Maryland, it was pretty big. That's one of the locations that went corrupt first. From what I figure, and again, California has always been kind of corrupt, but what I figure, it started in D.C., and any place where the deep state lived, they expanded it. And I happen to be working in Baltimore in the D.C. area, so we were hit pretty early on. What they did is they killed out anybody they thought would be honest and recruited people that they thought would be dishonest. But the deep state is full of sociopaths. That's where your sociopaths in government mostly reside, in the deep state. That's how they keep their jobs. So again, I had no clue what was happening. So again, they make it seem like it's this person and it's not. Right? That's the scam. Again, it's things that we're supposed to be using overseas against our enemies, but don't appear to be using it against our enemies. They appear to be using it against our people, our citizens. Again, they've made people homeless. They have a psyop to make people homeless. So you're out there trying to make people well and have great lives, and they're doing the opposite. That's where it comes from. And it's the scam has been instructed many places at this point. And that's part of that increase in homelessness, in addiction. Again, I had a psyop moved against me, a psychological operation by criminal members of government and private sector in an attempt to make me an addict, use narcotics, alcoholism, all of that. So they'll come into your town and they'll take over your town. It could be a federal task force. It could be something else. It could be a combination of things. But they have the entire city wired for to engage in corruption. They may even have entered the city under the guise of looking for corruption. See the scam? But it's the reverse. Although they're looking for corruption, but they're looking for corruption to be part of their criminal enterprise, recruiting. They'll have witnesses to say, you most likely, every state in the union has convicted a person that had the evidence presented by a group of role players. You've probably had a murder investigation say that the dead person instigated something with a weapon and may have been only defending themselves because you spoke to 3 or 4 people that were there, right? 3 seemingly disconnected, unrelated people. That's how bad it is. Now they'll tell you, well, you needed us for this, you needed us for that. You see the scam. They come in. That's where your officers need to. That's what I would do, and that's what I was doing at the end of the Marshal Service. I was making sure I wrote reports on everything, sent it to internal, sent it to the chain of command, because they'll come in later and try to extort you over it. They'll get another wing, another cell, and they'll come in and they'll bring it up somehow and expect you to do something similar or different for them. Or if they want you gone, they'll use it. Making it seem that it's unrelated people that found out something about you. For me, one of the incidents at the end, I wrote, and I actually also sent a report to DEA. They wanted to sell me steroids, which I found weird because I told everybody I use over-the-counter supplements. I don't use anything illegal. And the weird part is the Marshal Service at the end said we couldn't wear our U.S. Marshals gear to the gym. Like I'd leave work and I'd say U.S. Marshal Police on the back, and then I'd change it to gym. I did that because I didn't want anybody doing something stupid such as that, which it was around the Jonathan Luna death. I actually put those people in as possibly being suspects. There's obviously this former football guy from Canada, like a pro footballer or semi-pro or something, came in as a personal trainer, and everybody was getting jacked. I ignored it because most people just ignore it. Even the DEA said when I put the report in, they came and found me. I was in an FBI high threat case with witness production and all sorts of stuff. And I'm trying to think back. So the DEA officer, their agent, found me, a couple of them, and said, "Hey, we got your report, but we generally don't investigate that. It's just not something we investigate." And I would say, was that after John's death? It was somewhere around. It could have been even like a day before John's death, or actually, that was like I don't remember what day. I think that was early in the. It was towards the end of the week that the DEA guy I think came and spoke to me, and I said, "Okay, I just wanted to put that in there just to let you know." And one of their guys came up to me and offered me steroids. That's what happened. One was selling me steroids, and I found it weird because I told the guy when he said something about steroids, but he wasn't trying to sell it to me at first. And I made sure he understood that I use over the counter. I even recommend over the counter. And again, back then you could get just about anything over the counter. You could get Andro, and I think you still can probably. They just keep changing the the analog or whatever. Right. So I wasn't a heavy user. I used intelligently, and did great for me. Again, I was already over 30, so that's when you start using that stuff. Some people use it when they're 16. That might be overkill. So again, I wrote into I wrote a report because the guy tried to sell me steroids. I even told my chief, and again, it's just the way these things progress, I guess. And I guess they were attacking our courthouse, so I don't know why my chief said it that way. But I said, I said some guy tried to sell me steroids. He goes, what'd you do? I forget what he says. You say, "Oh, that didn't happen." Whammy, bammy, boomy, bammy, or something like that. So yeah, I wrote them, and I said no. I sent a report to Internal Affairs. I sent a report to my supervisor, and I sent a report to DEA. That's generally how people would generally treat it. But in this day and age of deep state, I would definitely, if anybody offers you steroids, write your chain of command and your internal affairs at a minimum. They can bring it later on and say you were offered steroid and you never reported it. Get rid of you in a second. But just to highlight that that's not normally what people do, but you need to protect yourselves. And all my time in the Marshal Service, nobody offered me drugs, steroids, or anything. Around the death of Jonathan Luna, I was offered steroids by a group of people that would have been around Jonathan Luna. So I gave that. I actually didn't say it in the interview with the PA state trooper. I called the FBI agent after I left. I said, you know what? There's a steroid organization in that gym. I said, why would they, kill John? Or I don't know if he used that word, but why would they do something to John? Or how is that related or whatever he said? And I said, I just, it's kind of a hunch. Now they may have psychologically operated John because I think they were part of the psychological operation against me. I can't put my finger on it, but a big part of it was FBI. FBI was totally off the hook. But again, that was when the deep state expanded and was taking over anything around DC. And this isn't like, it sounds like something CIA would do to protect their agents, but no, it's to protect, the criminal enterprise that was in the CIA and other places. Subsequent to that, you saw a lot of U.S. attorneys fired. It could be related to that type of activity, corrupt activity. Corrupt use of informants, corrupt use of agents, self-dealing, running a business. I mean, a real, not like Slickster was selling hats. I don't have a problem with that. Right. He would sell hats, hawk hats from the cell block. And they got in trouble. Somebody called on them. But I mean, running a real, criminal business. Like you want somebody hit, we contact law enforcement, whoever could hit the person, and then, we transfer the money and they hit them. Or, Marshal Service also, it's a big deal for people in law enforcement. It's kind of like personality worship. It's a big deal to get on the Marshal Service task force. So you have PA state troopers that want to be on the Marshal Service regional task forces. They'll be promised a position if they engage in some sort of corruption, like I sent off to the Attorney General there. So you have to be careful of that. Again, officers don't know how to protect themselves, and they end up into something that's, by the end of their career, that's an outright criminal enterprise at times. Because of that, it's, I don't know, the mystique or whatever it is. So they can get them to do stuff to get on the FBI task force, to get on the Marshal Service task force, and then they got them. They're extortable. So I was trying to keep myself from being extortable. Again, I was operated for decades. Just to show you that, again, it's not politics. Don't accept it as politics. Kristi Noem, as a congressperson, came against Obama. I know for a fact that the deep state attacked her, attacked her husband. Remember, I told you they attacked my wife, and that's how they got me. So I see elements of what they did to my wife and I. First, they attacked my wife and my brother and my mother. And then they attacked me. So once they had their minds controlled to do, reaction to their action, then they attacked me. Because I thought it was just, my wife talked about it. I thought she was just crazy. What people? I don't see any people. As you know, they were following me. But then again, it was already too late. Right. So they psychologically operate. It's not. They'll say it's an investigation if they get caught, but it's not investigative methods. But it is investigative methods taken. What the CIA does, they move the investigative methods further, and they don't call them investigative methods, or maybe they do. I don't know, but they move it past where it's an investigative method to where it's like prisoner of war camp technology against U.S. citizens. I'm not obviously overseas. All's fair in love and war. So Jonathan Luna and his friend in the FBI, she was a sex crime investigator. So part of my investigation was that somebody was being because it's a life ender at that point. So the difference is, if you go back when I was molested, nobody investigated anybody. In the 70s, nobody investigated anyone. Right, like Uncle Eddie, like in the late 70s, because he had some whack things, paying kids to do like really whack stuff. And I mean, there were like 30 kids or something like that. So what had happened is now all of this, Missing Exploited was created based upon a real mission instead of a deep state mission, is where it eventually went to. They corrupted. So people were afraid, especially CIA officers. So I'm thinking they may have had a case on some federal people or covered people. Again, remember that a deep state and the CIA have people. The CIA, based upon their mission, have people in the private sector that work for them legitimately and corruptly and illegitimately, and in some cases downright criminal. So I was believing maybe that he had a case. It could have been a different case. They're talking about this Cheney and the other. I don't think it's that case. That's how you have to understand. See, I was in the area, so I guess I could see. I couldn't see. I wasn't awake, but I was seeing things. I wasn't talking about much. But as far as Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, they did not kill Vince Foster. But that's what the CIA wanted us to believe, because they were ruling deep state. They wanted to control Clinton. So that's how it works. The dirt comes, Jonathan Luna, the dirt comes out. All of a sudden, there's all this. So essentially, the information about Cheney was used to include them. It's a psychological operation. It's a method. In other words, if they're including Cheney in the death of Jonathan Luna, then it gets kind of brushed aside a little bit. Well, because they don't want Cheney and the Madam case and all that coming up. Because apparently our district may have been related to that case somehow. Or maybe it is that case. I don't remember. Because that was DC, wasn't it? That book, I think they speak about that book, the names, or again, the book with the names. Same scam as the Epstein, right? So again, the information around it was corrupt. But also they're not going to let you know why they're doing it. They're going to give you 3 or 4 reasons in your mind as to how it all happened, so you can latch on to something and move on. Because they're operators. If you're related to the investigation, if you're related to the prosecution, things will happen in your life to shift your thought process away from it. So I believe somebody covered under the deep state, possibly CIA officer, was popped by the District of Maryland, and they wanted to own it. So they started with DC, then they moved out further. So the deep state decides who gets investigated, and eventually it became the thing. Uh, Not only who gets investigated and arrested, who doesn't get investigated, and arrested, who gets investigated and arrested. So they'll go after it, like Lutnick. Lutnick's a dead end. He obviously just visited Epstein, and again, the time frame that he visited him starting to get a little tighter about that type of thing. But when you're looking at somebody who got like work release, you don't think, oh, this is a major felon. Like people like Melania said, this is a group of people that were wealthy and they hung out with wealth, and that's all they saw. They didn't really look at much. As far as younger girls and older men, that's still happening. So again, you're not cleaning anything up. You're just trying to play a game. Prostitution is going on. Right? The police department, the godly police department. They're even called godly, just like the church, godly. Was running some sort of prostitution scam. And again, I'm not hypersensitive to anything until it's this thing. In other words, I don't care if you make money, even criminally to a certain degree. But when you're hurting people, then all bets are off. You can't attack people and force them into crime. You can't make up stories about people so you can end their life or debilitate their mind into violence and crime. The other case the other day, it's a mass shooting, but I would say we don't usually call those mass shootings. So in other words, if the people that were killed in that case were in half, let's split it in half, or like 5 and 6, number or whatever it is, we would call it a domestic. It's really a domestic. It's a domestic murder, but it's just a larger family. It just happened to be another kid. That happens in those cases. Some kids hanging out with the other kid, and they get caught up in a family murder-suicide type of thing. And again, it was suicide by cops, so at the end. Shreveport, Louisiana. Well, because generally a mass shooting is where the public is targeted, not a domestic targeting. But I would say, as far as I know, that's the largest domestic dispute targeted, I guess, mass shooting. But again, we generally would carry that in a different category because it wasn't an attack on the public. This is a general attack. And again, yeah, we include some of those have some relation, like a gang-related thing. But again, a street corner shooting where it just wipes out a street corner, that could be carried as a mass shooting, even though it's gang-related. Well, if only one victim was unrelated to the family, so I just found that would not fit what we usually call a mass shooting. Now, the question is, was that family being assassinated by any criminal enterprise? Obviously, in New Orleans, there's tons of deep state criminal enterprises. So to get back to where we were, officers need to write reports if they were solicited. Obviously, it could be the Marshal Service. I don't know for sure who it is. Generally includes PIs. They come into a city and they're probably busy here trying to take over the city and the county. Provide payment. Try to take officers out to party and then extort them if they have to. Show them the great life and give them some money. All right, stay peaceful. Praise God in all that you do. Praise God.